Look upon them, frail, empty husks left to rot in their meaningless end. To most, they are reminders of mortality's grasp. But to me, they are unpolished gems, waiting to be shaped into something transcendent. Necromancy, they say, is the crude art of making the dead walk. How narrow their understanding. I do not merely defy death, I reshape its essence. Watch closely. These creatures are not puppets. They are vessels, imbued with something far greater than life or death. You see it now, don't you? This is the difference between the conjurer's trick and the true architect's hand. The obelisk is no mere tool. It is a key to unraveling the secrets of the weave itself, bending the threads of reality into my design. The magic it channels does not simply revive, it refines, reshapes, enhances. These creatures are reborn not as mindless drones, but as perfected instruments of my will. But their bodies are not enough. Flesh is weak, fleeting, and frail. The soul, that is where true power lies. Within these crystalline prisons, I strip away the constraints of mortality. Their essence is mine to command, their spark eternal. Each soul becomes a thread in the grand tapestry of my ambition, weaving a destiny that even the gods will fear. The untrained eye would call this blasphemy, an abomination. I call it evolution. Death and life are but two sides of a crude coin, a coin I have rendered obsolete. What I create here is beyond such trivial concepts. It is mastery, unbound and absolute. The world will tremble before the perfection I bring. Let them call it forbidden. Let them fear my name, for I am Vecna, the Whispered One, the master of all that is hidden, and all that will soon be revealed. Vecna, Year of Tyrant's Pawn, 1495 DR, spoken from the undying king. Today, we rise from the grave to discover one of the most destructive beings in all the multiverse, Vecna, uncovering his early years, lichdom, rise to power, and the mystery surrounding his current whereabouts. On countless worlds, his name evokes tales of terror and cruelty. Vecna, the undying king. Vecna, the Whispered One, the lord of the rotted tower. But this infamous being had humble beginnings on the world of Uearth, where an order of wizards used him as a bootblack and scribe. He spent the better part of his childhood secretly educating himself in his master's arts. Once he learned all he could, he massacred the wizards. He then recorded his every foul thought and dream as he started to write his book of vile darkness. Vecna is one of the most infamous and feared creatures in existence. Born centuries ago on that distant world, he was a student of the darkest arts and practitioner of the most vile forms of magic. It is said that he was born into a lowly caste, son of a hedge witch, and a father he never knew. An order of wizards exiled Vecna's mother into the wastes for practicing the forbidden art of necromancy. The order bound her orphaned son into servitude and employed him as first a bootblack, then a scribe. Vecna spent the better part of his childhood secretly educating himself in his master's arts, stealing into their library of magical treatises each night after midnight. It was during these intense study sessions that he first heard a soothing voice in his head, a whisper from another world that promised him revenge if he would only yield to the hatred that was festering in his heart. Once he learned all he could from his masters and their books, he massacred them. On that very night, the voice urged him to record his every foul thought and dream, and he started to pen his book of vile darkness. In time, he became master of a great empire based on fear and horror. Exactly where this nation was located, or where the Dark Tower from which it was ruled, is a much debated topic among the scribes of that world. The evil of Vecna was said to have been limitless. In fact, legends claim that he actually bred whole villages of people just to supply bodies for his experiments. Other stories say that his power stripped whole sections of all life, creating regions like the Bright Desert. Whether or not these tales are true, it cannot be doubted that Vecna's dark and sinister armies spread death and destruction across whole continents. When he grew old, he used his magical powers to ward off the final coming of death. In time, however, even his great talents were unable to stay the hand of finality. Exactly what process he used is unknown, but somehow the darkest of mortals used the forbidden arts of necromancy to transform himself into the deadliest of liches. As he continued to amass power and spread evil, a powerful fallen paladin warrior named Cass rose to become his chief lieutenant. Known as Cass the Bloody-Handed, he pronounced Vecna's judgment and exercised power second only to the Lean himself. To reward his lieutenant for his devotion and service, Vecna forged the sword of Cass. With this weapon in hand, none could stand against the evil warrior. For a time, the darkness that shrouded Earth grew even more terrible under the might of these two sinister beings. In time, however, Cass was tempted by the power of his great weapon, and he turned it on his master. In the battle, Cass severed the Archlich's hand and put out his eye. After this great battle between the two that decimated the Dark Tower of Vecna, both combatants were destroyed. All that remained were the sword of Cass and the hand and eye of Vecna. As a creature of absolute darkness, Vecna became revered by those who would do evil. Over time, the worship and prayers of these people empowered the lingering remains of his spirit, and he became a demigod. Even godhood was not enough to satisfy the cravings of the Whispered One, working through his avatar. The Whispered One sought to regain his empire and, using the power that would thus be his, elevate himself to the status of a greater god. Had he succeeded, all of Earth would have been his to command, though it is doubtful that even this would have mollified the maimed lord. Fortunately, Vecna's bid to assume absolute power over the world of Greyhawk failed. In addition, the plan included a fatal flaw, which resulted in his current imprisonment. While he resided on the outer planes, Vecna was safe from the ever-hungry mists of Ravenloft. Because of the spells that his avatar wove in his name, however, this created a tenuous link between himself and the prime material plane. He thought nothing of this at the time. After all, what force would dare to challenge the great and immortal Vecna? Of course, he did not realize the strength of the dark powers and the tenacity of the mists. When they claimed his fortress, Citadel Cavities, he found himself pulled along with it. His new prison was the domain of Cavitius, a barren, skeletal land within the domains of dread. Cavitius was a reflection of its master, a grim and desolate place of bone-dry air, ash-choked winds, and landscapes of endless decay. Here, Vecna ruled as a Dark Lord, confined by the will of the dark powers who crafted these twisted dimensions. Though he held dominion within this land, his every attempt to leave was thwarted by the mists that encircled the realm. While others might have languished in despair, his mind remained sharp. He scrutinized every aspect of Cavitius, from its crumbling necropolises to the oppressive skies. He unraveled the hidden mechanisms of the dark powers that shaped his prison, noting how their magic tethered him to the realm. The Undying King realized that his confinement was both a curse and an opportunity. For the very powers that bound him could be turned to his advantage. Through long years of study, Vecna discovered a means to manipulate the mists. He exploited cracks in the fabric of the domain's design, whispering his will into the spaces between worlds. Cavitius became more than his prison. It became the crucible in which his plans for escape took form. Even in exile, Vecna's influence extended far beyond Cavitius. Across the multiverse, his name inspired fear and reverence. Through whispers carried on the winds of magic, he reached out to his mortal followers. Chief among these were his cult, a secretive and fanatical group devoted to their master's return. They acted as his hands and eyes in the material world, recovering artifacts tied to his power and enacting the rituals he devised. These artifacts, such as the fabled eye and hand of Vecna, became central to his plan. Each relic carried a fragment of his essence, allowing him to extend his influence even as he remained imprisoned. Through his followers, the Whispered One orchestrated the theft of potent magical items, disrupting the balance of power in distant lands. From the libraries of Candlekeep to the vaults of Waterdeep, his agents struck with precision, always guided by his unseen hand. As his network grew, Vecna turned his attention to forging alliances with other powerful entities. He manipulated liches, demons, and wayward wizards, promising them secrets and power in exchange for their service. Among these was Kaz, his former lieutenant and betrayer, whose cursed blade still bore the echoes of Vecna's wrath. Though Kaz remained an enemy, the lich's cunning ensured that even his old rival could be used to further his designs. The culmination of the plan was a ritual of unparalleled magnitude. Drawing upon the magic of Cavitius itself, he sought to pierce the veil of the mists and tear open a path to freedom. The ritual required immense power, and Vecna gathered it through a series of devastating acts. He drained the life force of entire cities within Cavitius, reducing them to silent wastelands. The screams of the dying fueled his ascent, their souls binding the fractures in his plan. At the heart of the ritual was the pinnacle of Cavitius, the bone citadel, where Vecna's throne of skulls sat atop a mountain of his enemies. Here, under a blood-red sky, he unleashed his final act of defiance against the dark powers. The ritual tore through the mists with a force that shook the entire domain of dread, collapsing the fragile boundaries of his prison. The dark powers attempted to intervene, but even their immense might could not contain the Whispered One. In a blinding flash of arcane energy, Vecna emerged into the multiverse once more. The escape left Cavitius in ruins, a testament to his power and the lengths he would go to achieve his goals. Yet his return was not met with silence. The planes shuddered at his reappearance, and the forces of creation stirred to meet the challenge. Look at them, scrambling, desperate, clutching their fragile hopes. They think themselves champions, saviors, destined to stand against the tide of my will. Yet, as I gaze upon their mortal forms, I see only inevitability, their failure. They think to overwhelm me with numbers, with strength, with courage, but I command forces unyielding, tireless, eternal, my soldiers. They are fragments of my purpose, bound by necromancy, perfected through the ages. Strike them down 1,000 times, and they will rise 1,000 more. What you destroy, I remake. What you burn, I restore. I am the master of death itself, and your mortal blades are powerless against me. Foolish child, did you think your paltry incantations could harm me? I wield the very essence of the weave, bending its threads to my will. Your spells are dust and ash compared to my mastery. Magic is not merely a tool, it is a weapon, a symphony of destruction and creation. Each spell I cast is a note in the dirge of your failure. Each incantation furthers the inevitable collapse of all you hold dear. Did you think me unaware? Your every move, your every thought, it is laid bare before my sight. I see through deception, through shadows, through your feeble attempts at cunning, and now you will serve me. You cannot outlast me, you cannot outfight me, and you cannot outthink me. My defenses are endless, my soul eternal. Strike me down, and I shall return. Burn my flesh, and I shall rise anew. What you fight is not a man, but an inevitability, a force of nature you cannot comprehend. You see now the folly of defiance against me. There is no victory. Against me, There is no escape. All that you were, all that you hope to become, it now belongs to me. Your story ends here. Mine continues eternal. Vecna's ambition now turned to the City of Doors, Sigil, a nexus of infinite worlds and a place of unparalleled significance. Known as the Cage, Sigil was ruled by the enigmatic Lady of Pain, a being of immeasurable power who tolerated no threats to her domain. Yet even the lady's might did not deter Vecna, for Sigil represented the ultimate prize. Control of its portals would grant dominion over all realities. The assault on Sigil was a masterstroke of strategy and raw power. He manipulated the city's portals, unleashing his forces upon its streets. His undead legions clashed with planar guardians, their battles carving scars into the fabric of the city. Vecna himself strode into the heart of Sigil, his presence warping reality around him. The Lady of Pain, silent and inscrutable, watched as her city teetered on the brink of annihilation. As he reached the center of Sigil, preparing to seize control, his plans were thwarted by a coalition of unexpected allies. Heroes from across the plains joined forces with Sigil's defenders, led by famous figures. Their combined might challenged even Vecna's vast power. At the height of the conflict, the Lady of Pain intervened, her wrath manifesting as bladed mazes that tore through his forces. Stripped of his advantage, Vecna was cast out of Sigil, his ambitions denied, but his legend unbroken. His defeat left the City of Doors scarred but standing, its portals once again under the Lady's inscrutable watch. Even with Vecna's removal, his time in the crux of Sigil effected a change in space-time. For a time, some outer planes drifted off and were forever lost, other colliding and merging. And one report suggested that at least one inner plane was run aground on a distant world of the prime material. At some point afterwards, rumors of Vecna stealing one of the Netherese obelisks was stated by scribes. The scribe that referenced this story was said to have originated within Bryn Shander in Icewind Dale. Their report documented that Vecna used it to erase the obelisk's creators from existence. These creators were known as the Weavers, a secret society of spellcasters. They created these obelisks to alter reality on a grand scale, sending a region or entire world back to an earlier time, effectively erasing part of history. Vecna, in all his power, stole the knowledge on how to create new versions of these powerful artifacts. What his purpose is with these devices is still yet to be discovered. To face the Whispered One is not simply to battle a lich, but to confront the very concept of inevitable defeat. Vecna's form is a masterpiece of dark resilience, a body sculpted by centuries of unholy power. He is impervious to the poisons and mundane blades that would fell lesser foes. Cold, lightning, and necrotic energy wash over him like a breeze, powerless to harm the undead lich. Even the mightiest of warriors, those who dare to stand before him, find their blows rendered meaningless. His body, fortified by the arcane, repels all but the most potent of magical strikes. Beyond his physical invulnerability lies an unassailable mind. He cannot be charmed, frightened, or paralyzed. Poisons fail to weaken him, and exhaustion never touches his form. To face this undead is to realize that no conventional strategy can succeed, for he stands unshaken by all the afflictions mortals wield. Vecna's vision is unparalleled, a piercing gaze that strips away illusion and reveals the world as it truly is. With true sight extending beyond normal eyesight, nothing can escape his notice. Illusions crumble, invisibility shatters, and secrets dissolve under the weight of his sight. In battle, his awareness borders on omniscience, his passive perception keen enough to detect the faintest movement, the smallest ripple in the fabric of existence. Death is not the end for Vecna. When struck down, His soul refuses to accept oblivion, lingering in the void between worlds. Over time, decades, or even a century, his essence knits itself into a new body. This rebirth is inevitable. His existence a cycle of destruction and renewal. Wherever he re-emerges, the world trembles anew, knowing that no victory over Vecna is ever permanent. Vecna's mastery of magic is unrivaled. His spells are capable of reshaping reality and commanding the forces of death and destruction. At will, he animates the dead to do his bidding, dispels the enchantments of others, and commands the winds and storms with bolts of lightning. He can render himself invisible, traverse dimensions, or gaze across vast distances with ease. His most devastating abilities, however, lie in his command over necrotic energy. With a single gesture, Vecna summons a torrent of spectral entities in his Flight of the Damned, their unholy screams echoing. Those caught within are engulfed in necrotic energy and terror, their resolve crumbling as the spectral swarm tears at their very souls. His rotten fate targets individuals with unrelenting precision, engulfing them in necrotic power that reduces them to lifeless husks, only for them to rise moments later as undead minions under his control. Even magic, the weapon most would turn to against him, becomes a double-edged sword in his presence. With his dread counterspell, he nullifies spells with an utterance, unraveling the magic before it can touch him. Those who dare to cast in his presence face not only the failure of their magic, but also the psychic backlash of their defiance. His fell rebuke, delivered as a reaction to an attack, is equally merciless, lashing out with necrotic power and teleporting him to safety, always one step ahead of his foes. From the ashes of obscurity, Vecna's story began, a tale as much about ambition as it is about the perils of power. Born into a lowly caste on the world of Earth, he rose not by heritage, but through sheer force of will, carving a path from insignificance to infamy. Through his rise and fall, we are reminded that ambition can propel one to greatness, but it can also lead to the unraveling of everything they seek to control. I am the inevitable truth of existence, the decay that claims all things, the shadow that lingers beyond the edge of light. Through me, mortality crumbles into eternity, and order succumbs to the supremacy of my will. Thank you for watching the video. We have more videos planned, so like and subscribe to make sure you watch those when they release. Thanks to our members DJ, Alberto, Zeno, and Forrest who have signed up to our memberships. If you would like to support the channel further, take a look at the links for Patreon and our membership on YouTube. See you all on the next video.